The first thing I noticed wasn't a scream or a siren or even the crackle of a gunshot. It was silence, specifically the absence of the paging system at the city hospital, a hollow absence that rang louder than noise. For 2 years as an EMT, that sound had been background, hummed something I tuned out like the fridge motor or traffic 2 blocks over. That morning, it was gone. I was at my kitchen table bracing my bad knee with a ratty elastic wrap and half listening to AM radio out of Bowling Green. Bear, my shepherd mix, was asleep under my chair, paws twitching like he was chasing rabbits. Upstairs, my kid sister Emma, 17 gap year dropout, and all attitude and earbuds, was passed out under a ceiling of comic book posters in the guest room. It was 5:42 a.m. when the radio voice cracked mid-weather update. Repeat, it said, all regional hospitals are closing doors until further notice. EMS units are instructed not to transport. If you experience flu-like symptoms or aggression in loved ones, do not approach. Then static. Just like that, the world shifted. The apartment suddenly felt too small, like the air itself had turned acidic. The wrap on my knee was too tight. I was reaching for my phone when it rang. Riley, my girlfriend, had pulled a night shift at University Hospital. I hit speaker and pressed my hand to Bear's side like I needed to feel a heartbeat that wasn't mine. Tommy. She gasped, her voice too high, laced with adrenaline. They bolted triage. Patients are biting staff. Like actually biting them. Admin pulled the fire alarm to scatter everyone but half the ERs barricading in closets. I wanted to laugh. I thought of bath salt horror stories and Florida headlines. But her voice wasn't joking. I'm heading for the stairwell. Shit, Tommy, they're coming up. Her voice was swallowed by a sound I couldn't place. Something metal being scraped. Then a wet thud. Oh God, she whispered, almost too quiet to hear. They're in the stairwell. Then nothing. My thumb hit redial instinctively. No ring, just dead air. Bear sat upright, ears locked on the front door. Then I heard it, a deep, low howl in the distance. The emergency siren, not the police or ambulance wail. The citywide municipal alert, the one they only test once a year every July. I turned on the kitchen TV, muting the volume. The screen glowed red, a banner scrolling across in white block font. Stay indoors. Authorities en route. Do not intervene with infected. No news anchors, no timestamp, no comfort. I hobbled to the stairwell and called up to Emma. She cracked her door open, blinking at me with mascara-smudged eyes. If this is another apocalypse drill prank, she muttered. I swear. She saw my face and stopped cold. Earbuds vanished into her hoodie pocket. We moved like muscle memory. Curtains drawn, windows locked, front door bolted. I dragged the couch across the entry with one leg limping and the other brace, told Emma to fetch every flashlight and battery in the place. I grabbed the Mossberg shotgun from behind the pantry door, blowing off a coat of dust that made my nose sting. My dad's old Marine-issued pump action, kept for home defense, but never fired in anger. 2 boxes of shells from the drawer beneath. I shoved shells into every pocket I could. The lights went off, not by choice, just a flicker. Then darkness, like the grid had blinked first. Outside, the sun hadn't risen yet, but the clouds over the skyline glowed orange. Not sunrise, something burning. A silver Honda screamed past our street passenger door, flapping like a loose jaw. On the opposite side of the road, Mrs. Gomez from apartment 3B was stuck in her car, banging the steering wheel. Her toddler was strapped in the backseat, both of them crying silently through the glass. I wanted to help. Every EMT instinct screamed at me, but I couldn't sprint. My knee would collapse, and I knew the rules. First contact in a panic scene gets you killed. I shut the blinds. My heart felt like it was punching my ribs, not just beating. I told myself to think like a medic again. Secure the site, assess threats, preserve life. That life, Emma. Riley. Bear. The knock came 20 minutes later. Not a bang, not a crash, just a polite knock on the back stairwell door. 3 raps. Hesitant. Bear froze, ears forward. Emma whispered, "Cops." I shook my head. Cops announced themselves loud. The knock came again, then scraping. Something hard and uneven against metal. I crept to the peephole. A figure stood just outside the landing lamp, barefoot, wearing a hospital gown. A white patient bracelet caught the light as the figure leaned forward. I watched, heart thundering, as it pressed its forehead to the wired glass and dragged its teeth across it. Not a person, not anymore. We ducked. Bear's growl turned to a low whimper. I gripped the shotgun tighter, trying to keep my breathing even. The thing outside moaned low and wet like a dying furnace. Then its steps creaked down the stairs, metal echoing. Gone. I exhaled so hard, black spots dotted my vision. Emma whispered, What the hell was that? I don't know, I said. But we stay quiet. We don't open that door. We wait. We sat in the dark, backs to the wall, waiting for another knock. I kept checking my phone for a message from Riley. Nothing. Then at 6:31 a.m. I made a decision. I loaded my backpack with batteries, gauze, painkillers, and duct tape. Slung the Mossberg across my shoulder. I wrapped my knee brace tighter. Emma insisted on coming with me. She had Dad's .38 revolver from the locket box, hands shaking but determined. Bear followed loyal without question. We opened the door to the apartment stairwell. The air that rushed in smelled like smoke and cheap weed. The city outside had gone feral. The street outside our building looked like the world had left the oven on too long. Smoke curled from the east end of Broadway. Newspaper pages skittered across the asphalt, streaked with maroon fingerprints. Car alarms cried like lost children, but no one came to shut them off. I counted 5 abandoned vehicles between our block and the corner bodega. One still had the engine humming, driver's door wide open. We moved like shadows. Emma walked tight to my side, crowbar holstered on her backpack like a sword. Bear took point tail, straight nose twitching. I limped behind, shotgun locked and ready. We didn't speak. In this new version of Louisville, even a whisper felt like permission for something to find us. The bodega was a narrow corner store, filthy linoleum floors, expired energy drinks, and the smell of grease that never really left your nose. A place we joked about never shopping at sober. The front gate had been bent upward, like someone had tried to crawl in or out in a hurry. The glass door underneath was cracked in a spiderweb pattern. No lights, no motion. Emma tugged the gate up further while I kept watch. It screeched like a dying animal. We ducked inside. The air inside was worse than the street, spoiled meat and ozone. Something had leaked. The freezer door stood wide open, rainbow swirls of melted ice cream puddling beneath. Fast, I whispered. 2 minutes. Bear sniffed toward the back cooler, then sneezed. I grabbed water jugs first, 2-gallon size, still sealed. Emma filled her bag with batteries, instant ramen protein bars. She paused by the dog food aisle and shoved a bag of kibble under one arm. Good girl. Then I found the ammo. Behind the counter, under the register, a cardboard box labeled 12, gauge buckshot, do not sell without permit. I opened it. Jackpot. 20 shells, some already loose in the box. Dumped them into my hoodie pocket like candy. Then came the knock. Soft, precise. Not from the front, from the corridor leading to the storage freezer in the back. I froze. Knock. Pause. Knock. Not erratic, not frantic, like someone politely asking for attention. Emma looked at me, hand on her revolver. Bear's fur lifted from neck to tail. Help me, a voice rasped through the door. Please, I'm stuck. Female. Mid-20s maybe. But something about the voice, it slurred. Dragged vowels like the tongue didn't work right. Not drunk, not tired, wrong. I raised my hand for silence. The doorknob rattled. Then it stopped. We backed away in slow, controlled steps. I raised the Mossberg. If the door burst open, I wanted first shot clean. It didn't burst. It creaked. The hinges sighed as the door opened, maybe 3 inches, just enough for an arm to slide through. And it did, slow and steady. Pale forearm, gray-blue skin, IV puncture on the inside elbow. Hospital bracelet still clinging to a bone-thin wrist. The fingers groped the air like they were blind nails trailing across plywood like it was butter. Bear growled deep and primal. The hand paused, then withdrew like it understood it had been seen. The door closed softly. We didn't wait to see what else was back there. We slipped under the gate, water and gear in hand. The morning had brightened into a kind of bruised lavender. Across the street, smoke from a burning substation curled into the sky like the world was trying to cremate itself. We didn't talk until we reached the end of the block. Emma finally said, "That was talking." "No," I said, "that was mimicry." What's the difference? Instinct doesn't learn full sentences. We were almost home when we heard the crying. Behind a locked bus stop kiosk, curled beneath an overturned pamphlet rack, was a boy. Couldn't have been older than 12. Wearing a Marvel hoodie 2 sizes too big, face blotched with soot and dried blood. He clutched a plastic inhaler like it was holy. Bear found him first, nosing gently at the boy's sneakers. When I stepped closer, the kid flinched and shrank back, eyes wild. "It's okay," I said, lowering my shotgun. "You're safe now." He wheezed. The inhaler hissed. No medicine left. Emma pulled a blister pack from her bag, albuterol, CVS brand. She popped one open and helped him load the chamber. The kid took a puff, then another. Color returned to his cheeks like magic. He blinked and finally said, "My name's Miles. You hurt, Miles?" I asked. He shook his head. "Just hiding." The manager, he chewed off Mrs. Abernathy's ear. I ran when he started on the other one. His voice didn't shake. Not like it should have. Too calm. I checked his arms. His sleeves were soaked in blood, but not his. No bite marks, no cuts, just someone else's gore. Emma looked at me. I nodded. You're coming with us. He didn't argue. Back at the apartment, I shoved the couch back across the door while Emma flicked on the emergency lantern. Bear collapsed near the window tail, still thumping. Miles sat cross-legged on the rug, drinking bottled water like he'd forgotten what it tasted like. Then he said something that changed everything. My dad worked at a lab, biotech, CDC grant. They were working on something for rabies mutations. Said it could go airborne someday. I froze mid-sip. 3 days ago, Miles went on, he gave me a shot. Said it was proof of concept. Told me to lie low if anything weird happened. I looked at Emma. She looked back. Then I looked at Miles again, this time really looked. No bites, he pulled up his sleeve. Nothing but a fading iodine ring where the injection had been. I think he whispered, I'm not like them. The air in the room felt different, charged. You're telling the truth, I asked. I don't lie about science, he said. Bear laid his head in the boy's lap, accepting him like family. And just like that, we had more than just water and ammo. We had hope. Dawn didn't break that morning at Bruised. A slow, ugly wash of copper, bleeding through the clouds like someone bled out behind the sky. I stood at the window, tightening my knee brace, shotgun balanced across the back of a kitchen chair, eyes fixed on the hospital district in the distance. There in the haze, University Hospital's rooftop glowed faint orange like a wound smoldering just beneath skin. Emma sat cross-legged on the living room rug, loading the shotgun she found in Dad's old lockbox, hands surprisingly steady. She'd laid out strips of gauze, a couple power bars, and 3 of Mom's beat-up Louis L'Amour westerns for reasons she hadn't explained. Maybe comfort, maybe ritual. Bear paced from window to hallway, ears twitching at every moan the wind carried in from the street. Miles leaned against the couch, one hand buried in Bear's fur, the other fiddling with a pencil he'd sharpened to a lethal point. His inhaler sat beside him on the windowsill like a talisman. The hand-cranked radio hissed static until the dial caught a signal just long enough for a garbled voice to cut through. CDC confirms, bite to turn rate, 4 hours max. Evacuation corridors compromised. Eastern grid down. Louisville under emergency containment. The message fractured into buzz and screech. I let it die. 4 hours. That was the magic number now. 4 hours between bite and full transformation. If Riley had been bitten and she was still holding on, then maybe she was still her. I sat down beside Bear, pressed my forehead against his and said, we go at first light. Emma didn't protest. Not this time. The plan, if you could call it that, was simple. First the pharmacy 2 blocks down, then the hospital. I needed antibiotics, more gauze, saline if we could find it. Miles needed an extra inhaler. And if Riley was alive, I wasn't going to let the city swallow her. I pulled on my responder vest, not for protocol, but for the deep pockets. Slid a crowbar into one of the loops. Shells in the side saddle of the Mossberg, 2 boxes buried in the backpack. Emma wore her leather jacket zipped to the neck, duct tape wrapped around the cuffs to resist bites. Bear had a towel tied around his throat, the closest thing to protection we could manage. Before we moved, I made us sit back to back and breathe in sync. 4 seconds in hold, 2 4 seconds out. Dad's old stress drill hammered into us during storm seasons and lock-in drills. It helped, kept panic in its corner. We stepped out at 6:19 a.m. The hallway reeked of melted plastic and something sharper, urine and rot. Someone on 4B had tried to torch their mattress before the water pressure gave out. Now everything was damp and blackened. The elevator hung between floors, doors pried open, cable limp like snapped muscle. We took the stairs. Bear led. Miles hugged the wall. Emma behind me, revolver raised finger just outside the guard like we'd practiced. At the second landing, I stopped. Footsteps. Not ours. Slow, dragging rubber soles across concrete. I leaned over the rail and saw him. A man, maybe mid-30s, nurse's scrubs name tag twisted backward around his neck. Kin pale, eyes the color of ash water. Head cocked as if sniffing the air. His limbs worked, wrong shoulders, twitching knees, bending on the beat of a song no one else could hear. I tried the calm voice I used on psych calls. Sir, you okay? You need medical help. His head snapped toward us, and he ran. No scream, no warning, just movement jagged and inhuman. One moment he was staggering, the next he was barreling up the steps at full speed. Bear barked once. Emma shouted. I brought the shotgun up, but the hallway was too tight. I fired from the hip. The slug caught him high in the chest and spun him sideways. He didn't fly back. He just folded, landing face first against the railing. For a heartbeat, I thought he was down. Then he started to crawl, no sound. Just a wet hiss as lung tissue hissed from the hole in his side. His fingers scrabbled against the steps trying to rise. I stepped in, pressed the barrel to his temple, and fired. No cinematic gore. No slow-motion death. Just a pop of pink mist and the soft thud of surrender. Emma gagged but kept her eyes on the hall. Miles stared at the body's twitching foot, his hand buried in Bear's scruff. "Don't memorize it," I said, eyes forward. We moved fast after that. The pharmacy was a Walgreens at the corner of Preston and Shelby, halfway to the hospital. The windows had shattered metal grating pried up by someone too panicked to finish. The sliding doors hung crooked, held open by a toppled wheelchair. Inside, a green emergency light blinked like a heartbeat monitor. The aisles were half-looted pill bottles scattered across the floor. We stepped over smeared footprints in empty inhaler boxes. I headed for the locked narcotics cage. Emma beelined for first aid. Miles found a packet of trail mix and handed it to Bear like an offering. I used a set of bolt cutters from the hardware aisle to snap the lock. Inside the cage was gold antibiotics, painkillers, EpiPens, insulin pens, and 2 bags of saline. I grabbed everything I could. We nearly missed the kid, 12 maybe, curled behind the greeting card rack, knees to chest, eyes wide and dry. No movement, not even a blink. Bear sniffed him first. The boy jerked but didn't scream. Miles knelt beside him. "Hey," he said. "It's okay, we're not like them." The boy blinked, then nodded. "I'm Ben." His shirt was stained. His inhaler was empty. But he wasn't bitten, not yet. Then the sound came, a shuffle. Then chains dragging across tile. Bear growled low and guttural. The store manager, what used to be him, limped into view from the back. Half his face was gone, just cartilage and a slack jaw. His name tag still clung to the remnants of his chest. He locked onto Ben's voice like sonar. Emma raised the .38, hands trembling. 6 rounds felt stupidly small. I stepped in front of Ben and fired at the manager's knee. The leg snapped sideways, but the man didn't even grunt. He kept coming. Another slug to the chest staggered him, but didn't stop him. I realized the truth. Mid-pump center mass meant nothing now. Their hearts had already clocked out. Emma got it too. Her next round caught the side of his head. Pink froth sprayed the end cap. He twitched, then fell. Ben didn't cry. He just buried his face in Bear's fur and held on. We didn't speak as we loaded up. Miles grabbed more inhalers. Emma took tampons and duct tape. I filled every pocket with anything that said sterile on the label. Outside, the smoke was thick enough to sting. Somewhere up the block, a gas station had gone up. Sirens wailed, but no engines came. We turned toward the hospital, toward Riley. Bear limped slightly from the impact earlier. Emma wrapped a bandage around his flank and kissed his snout. "You keep saving us," she said. And Bear, like the dumb hero he was, licked her cheek and kept walking. The hospital loomed like a dying titan over the skyline, half-lit smoke drifting from one of the upper floors. Most of the windows were dark. A few flickered orange like they were trying to blink a warning no one would heed. We stood across the street, hidden behind a burned-out city bus, watching the silhouette of University Hospital tremble in the heat haze of morning. "We take the garage," I said. "Less glass, better cover." Emma nodded, jaw tight. Miles clutched Bear's leash and one of the spare inhalers. Ben, the new kid we found, had a white-knuckle grip on the aluminum flashlight I gave him. It looked like it weighed more than his arm. The garage yawned open like a concrete throat. Inside, motion lights flickered weakly. We moved slow. Single file. Bear padded ahead, tail low. My Mossberg stayed raised. Emma and Miles flanked Ben. Everyone knew the drill by now. Don't talk, don't trip, shoot only if you have to. We cleared 3 levels. Just abandoned vehicles, a splatter of blood on a rear windshield, a stroller flipped on its side. Then we hit the 4th. The smell came first, chlorine and rotting leaves. That bizarre mix of sterile and sick. Emergency sprinklers had gone off recently, leaving thin puddles across the floor. They reflected the ceiling strobes in fractured rainbows. At the far end, half concealed behind a gray Dodge Charger, was a man. At least he used to be. He wore an orderly uniform, blue scrubs. Trauma shears glinted in his hand. He stood perfectly still, back to us. I held up a hand. "Stop, sir," I said quietly, trying the calm voice again. "We're looking for survivors. We have medicine." No response, not even a flinch. Then he twitched, just his right shoulder, like someone had yanked a puppet string. He spun. His eyes were empty, gray, like river stones. His mouth open, teeth red. No scream, just breath, fast and wet. Then he charged, not staggered, charged. Emma stepped forward, swinging her crowbar in a wide arc. The hooked end caught under his cheekbone with a sound like a snapped branch. She tried to pull it loose, but his momentum yanked her off balance. They toppled together, limbs tangling, her scream echoing off the concrete. I moved to fire, but couldn't. The angle was wrong. If I missed, I'd hit her. Then Bear was there, teeth bared, crashing into the orderly's side. Flesh tore. Something cracked. But the man didn't fall. He grabbed Bear by the scruff and threw him. My dog, my best damn friend, hit the side of a sedan and crumpled. The roar that left my throat didn't sound human. I stepped in, jammed the Mossberg under the orderly's chin, and pulled the trigger. The blast drowned everything. Light, sound, thought. His head vanished. Emma rolled away coughing. I dropped beside Bear. He was still breathing, sides heaving, blood matting his fur. Stay with me, I whispered, pressing gauze to his flank. Don't you bail on me now, buddy. Emma knelt beside me. Her lip was split. One of her sleeves was torn. You okay, I asked. She nodded once. He was still warm. He was fresh, I said. That's what we're walking into. Not corpses, converts. She blinked fast, but held it together. Miles handed me more gauze. Ben didn't speak, just hugged Bear's paw. Let's move, I said. The final ramp took us to the rooftop helipad. The doors had been forced open, chains snipped, locks shattered. I didn't like that. I liked what I saw up top even less. A Blackhawk, blades spinning, engine screaming. Two soldiers in desert camo stood by the side door, respirators on rifles slung low. One waved us forward. Non-targets incoming, he shouted. Move, move, move. I didn't need to be told twice. I slung the shotgun, grabbed Bear by his collar, and half lifted, half dragged him up the ramp. Miles and Ben ran beside us, heads low. Emma helped pull Bear over the lip of the cargo door. The interior of the bird smelled like sweat grease and disinfectant. A cot was bolted down on one side. IVs, medical crates, duct-tape stretchers along the floor, some already occupied by civilians strapped in with Velcro restraints. I caught glimpses, an old man moaning through clenched teeth, a teenage girl with her wrists duct taped sobbing quietly, a woman convulsing, foam gathering at the corners of her mouth. Get down, the corporal barked. Strap in, we're lifting now. The helicopter surged upward. I almost didn't notice Riley at first. She was sitting up on one of the stretchers, back braced against a crate, sweat glistening on her forehead. Her left arm was bandaged. Deep red bled through the wrap. Her eyes found mine. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Jesus, she whispered, you look like shit. I could say the same, I said, my voice breaking. I crossed to her and touched her face. Warm, not burning. Her pupils were normal, pulse strong. But I asked? She nodded. 3 hours ago, maybe 4. But I'm still me. Hope is a dangerous thing. It flared in my chest like a match to gasoline. The helicopter banked hard. I looked through the open side door and saw the city falling away. Smoke columns rose from downtown. One of the cranes by Slugger Field collapsed sideways, snapping like a toothpick. Fires flickered in residential blocks. Whole neighborhoods drowning in orange. We made it, Emma said behind me. No, I corrected softly. We escaped. We haven't made it anywhere yet. The corporal spoke into his headset, then turned to the group. Evac protocol confirmed. We're diverting to Evansville Field Command. Cheyenne Mountain is green. You're being moved west. He pointed at Miles. Kid says he's immune. That true. Miles lifted his arm, showing the injection site. My dad worked for a lab, CDC project. He said I was a prototype. The corporal's face changed. He stepped forward, grabbed the radio. We have a subject. Repeat, we have an immune subject. I glanced at Miles, at Riley, at Emma sitting beside Bear. This wasn't over, not by a long shot, but for now we were alive, and that was enough. The Blackhawk touched down like a hammer wrapped in gauze, jarring but deliberate. Skids slammed into the turf behind what used to be the Evansville Civic Convention Center. Now it looked like something built for war. HESCO barriers, layered in rings, razor wire coiled above Jersey barriers, watchtowers made of welded scaffolding, and fear. The air reeked of bleach and diesel. As soon as the rotors began to slow, soldiers in mop gear swarmed the landing zone. They wore hazmat suits, with rifles slung across their backs, visors fogged with breath. No names, no insignia. One of them banged on the side of the chopper and shouted, "Deacon, move now." We were herded out into a corridor of floodlights so bright it washed out the smoke. Bear resisted the leash claws, scrabbling against the gravel, but Emma knelt beside him and whispered every good word she knew until he followed. Miles clung to Riley's hand like it was an anchor in a hurricane. They split us at the gate, shoving us through separate inflatable tents, spraying mist that smelled like pool shock, and rubbing alcohol. The kind of chemical cocktail that doesn't kill fear, but marinates it. I watched as a tech tried to spray Bear until Emma nearly punched him in the mask. After decon, we emerged into the belly of the beast, a massive open hangar, lit by sodium bulbs in organized chaos. Folding cots lined up in rows like a military funeral, pretending to be a triage center. Wires 4 stands clipboards, screams from behind plastic curtains, a place where hope got triaged and buried. A tall woman in a white lab coat intercepted Miles as soon as we stepped through the plastic curtain. "Richie Granger," she asked. Her tone was gentle, but it didn't fool me. "My name's Miles," he said. "Granger's our dog." She didn't laugh. "I'm Dr. Marion Hale," she said, badge clipped to her collar pistol holstered beneath her coat. "CDC Special Pathogens. I hear you might be special." He flinched closer to me. I stepped between them. "You can draw blood," I said, "but you don't take him anywhere unless I watch." She raised an eyebrow. "Are you his legal guardian?" "No," I said, "I'm his lifeline." Her eyes lingered on my blood-crusted vest, the Mossberg slung over my shoulder, my limp. "Observation bay," she said to a tech. "Set up containment pod. No sedation. 2-hour protocol. I want baseline readings." Two soldiers flanked Miles, both with sidearms. The boy hesitated, turned to me, then to Emma, and finally to Riley. "Will I come back?" Riley said, her voice cracked but sure. "You're just going to get looked at, okay? No needles without warning, no doors that don't open." He nodded once, then walked with them into the belly of the chaos. Bear whined. We were tagged, yellow exposed, asymptomatic, worth monitoring, but not worth resources. They pinned us in with nylon stanchions and duct tape. A nurse handed me a packet of saltines and a can of orange soda like it was rations in a war movie. "I saw Riley," Emma said softly. "They took her to the second wing near surgical. I didn't wait for clearance. I limped past the barricade, ducked 2 techs, and followed the trail of shouting until I hit a partition lined with gurneys. There she was, alive, propped on an inclined bed, AV in one arm, bandage around the other. Her eyes found me immediately. She smiled. "You look like someone ground you through a snowblower." I pulled a plastic chair closer and leaned in, touching her forehead. "Still warm," I murmured. "Still human," she said. "Been over 4 hours." Relief punched through me like a slug to the gut. "Then it's real," I whispered. "You didn't turn." "I guess," she said. "Or maybe I'm just stubborn." A tech interrupted with a tray of pills and a clipboard. Riley signed something. Then the siren hit. A shrill electronic tone filled the hangar, followed by a computerized voice, initiating internal lockdown. "Containment breach in quarantine block C. Standby for threat suppression protocol." The room turned to chaos. Steel shutters slammed down over the exits. Red strobes lit the plastic dividers like a haunted house. People screamed, staff grabbed sidearms, and carts were upended to form makeshift barricades. Emma rushed over Bear at her heel. "What is it?" "Block C," I shouted. They lost it. Then came the sound I can't forget, the wet thwack of a gurney overturning. An orderly stumbled out of the curtain bay, throat flayed open, eyes glassy. He collapsed. Behind him came a woman in restraints gown, soaked lips torn bloody from chewing through the leather strap they'd tried to use to hold her jaw shut. She shrieked a feral guttural scream. Then the others came, a dozen, maybe more, some limping, some running. All hospital-gowned eyes, white mouths open like broken hinges. "Fire," someone screamed. The guards opened up. Burst fire, M4s and sidearms barking nonstop. But these things didn't die easy. Not from torso shots, not from panic. Emma shoved Ben behind a rolling cart. Bear snarled and stood guard. I leveled the shotgun and waited. One of them vaulted the barricade and came straight for Riley. No hesitation, just hunger. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I fired point blank. Skull gone. She flinched as blood rained across her sheets, but stayed upright. A man lunged over the IV rack toward Emma. Bear met him midair, teeth ripping through his ear. They toppled into a stretcher. I reloaded. Emma swung her crowbar, cracked 2 skulls before her arms started to shake. A woman with no jaw crawled across the floor, tongue whipping like a snake. Riley grabbed trauma shears from her tray and jammed them into the eye socket. She didn't even flinch. Then I saw it, Miles. Across the room, running toward us, ducking under hands, leaping bodies. Behind him, Dr. Hale fired her pistol at a figure in a tattered National Guard vest. It didn't go down. She did. Miles stumbled into me. "We have to go." "What about Hale?" She's dead. I didn't ask how he knew. The sirens changed pitch. Not an alarm, a command. Thermogel activation commencing. Evacuation must be immediate. Flame seal in 90 seconds. Fire protocol. They were going to torch the hangar. I grabbed Emma. Back door load zone. Riley climbed off the gurney, still armed with the shears. Together we formed a wedge. Riley Bear. Mum. Miles Ben in the center. I took the front. Two other survivors joined behind us, one missing a finger, the other limping on a broomstick. The doors buckled. I primed the Mossberg and led us through the last gap in the curtain wall. At the far end of the hangar, the loading dock waited, and we ran for it. The fire kissed us first with heat, not flame. A whoosh, sharp as a scream, rolled through the hangar as the thermogel ignited. The ceiling lit up in waves, gray gel dripping from the sprinkler. Heads caught fire midair and clung to everything it touched. Curtains melted. Gurneys became bonfires. The whole triage unit turned into a crematorium. We barreled through the last loading dock doors just as they slammed shut behind us, locking the fire inside like a hell we barely outran. Outside, dawn had barely started bleeding through the eastern sky. The air reeked of diesel antiseptic and scorched synthetic. A field and ambulance military issue, 6 wheels armored panels sat idling by the exit ramp, back doors already open. The major from the chopper Caldwell was behind the wheel, barking orders into a cracked handset. "Get in or die out here," he shouted. I didn't need convincing. I lifted Bear up first. He whimpered but didn't resist. Riley climbed in after him, coughing hard. Emma helped Miles and Ben, then turned to me, hand outstretched. I grabbed it and pulled myself up just as the concrete floor behind us cracked open with a heat bloom. Fire belched out, sucking the air from our lungs. The door slammed shut. Inside, screams smothered under fire. The major slammed the throttle. The engine roared. We sped out of Evansville like a bullet fleeing its own casing. The cab smelled like burnt plastic and old blood. Fluorescent lights flickered red. Steel benches on both sides held the 6 of us plus 2 soldiers, one pale and wounded, the other clenching a sidearm like it was faith. No one talked for the first mile. Then the major broke the silence. CDC command is gone. Chicago went dark overnight. Atlanta fell 3 hours ago. Only active zone left is Cheyenne Mountain. Riley looked up. Colorado. The major nodded. NORAD turned biocontainment. Civilian evac being routed west through Indiana. Nearest functioning airfields outside Mount Vernon. I watched the firelight recede in the rear view. My city. Our city was gone. Louisville, with its minor league ballparks and riverfront jazz bars, was now just ash blowing across cornfields. Miles sat beside Bear, feeding him water from a travel bottle. The kid looked hollow but clear-eyed. He glanced at me. "I think Dr. Hale wanted to take me to Cheyenne too," he said. "To run more tests. You think she meant well?" I asked. "I think she meant efficiently." I didn't argue. The highway was a minefield of debris and despair. We passed burned-out sedans, jackknife semis, and the occasional body half covered with a blanket, like someone tried to hold on to decency for one last minute. No other moving vehicles. No helicopters. No sirens. Just us and the long black ribbon of asphalt leading west. 20 miles out, we saw them. A refugee convoy, maybe 40 vehicles deep, had stalled in a cloverleaf intersection. Some had run out of gas. Others had broken down. Families stood outside their cars waving flags, white t-shirts, pillowcases, napkins on sticks. Some carried infants. Others had rifles. All of them looked toward our olive drab ambulance with the same question in their eyes. "Will you stop for us?" The major gritted his teeth. "If we stop, we die." Emma looked at me. I didn't need to hear the words. We couldn't take them all. We barely had space for ourselves, but I couldn't keep looking away from a man in a soaked flannel shirt, holding a baby wrapped in bubble wrap. "We don't have to stop," I said, "but we don't have to be ghosts either." The major shot me a glare, meaning slow down, just long enough to toss out some rations. Gauze. Water. "You think charity buys us survival?" "No," I said. "I think it buys us our souls." For a heartbeat, I thought he'd punch me. Then he sighed. The truck eased to a crawl, 10 miles per hour. Emma and I opened the side hatch. We began shoving crates out, MREs, bottles, a roll of gauze, 3 flashlights, even Bear's backup bag of kibble. A woman sobbed as she caught a pack of diapers. A kid waved a juice box over his head like it was a trophy. As the truck accelerated again, one little girl in pink bows blew us a kiss. It floated behind like ash. I sat back, wiped sweat from my face. "Your dad would have done the same," Emma whispered. I didn't answer, but I thought he'd have done more. He'd have stopped the truck. Miles leaned over, voice low. "My dad said good people were the control group in an ugly experiment. I nodded, staring out the tiny porthole. Then we'd better not skew the data. An hour passed in silence. Bear's breathing had evened out. Riley had stitched his side using catgut from the med pack. She looked exhausted, pale, but still her, still Riley. The major finally said, "When we reach the airfield, you're not guaranteed priority." "What does that mean?" I asked. "Means space is limited. They'll triage who boards based on utility, skills, strategic value." He looked at Miles. "Your blood might matter. You keep him alive, you buy your way in. And if I don't, then you're just another evac case with a limp and a gun." Emma stiffened beside me. I saw it in her face, the quiet terror of being expendable. The major wasn't trying to be cruel. He was just saying what came next. The truck jostled as we turned off the highway onto a side road lined with flares. Up ahead, I saw the edge of the Mount Vernon airstrip, two C-130s idling on the cracked tarmac. Floodlights cut through low-hanging mist. Soldiers waved chem lights. A field medic stood by with a clipboard and a Geiger counter modified to detect infections. We'd made it, but we weren't safe. Not yet. The Mount Vernon airstrip looked like a forgotten piece of Cold War infrastructure. Cracked runways, floodlights flickering a sea of mud where grass used to be. Two massive C-130s loomed under the gray dawn. Their engines were whining like they were impatient to flee. Ground crews in biohazard suits moved like ghosts, efficient, silent, faceless. We rolled to a stop beside a triage tent lined with floodlights and sandbags. A soldier banged on the side of the ambulance. "Triage and intake now. Vitals before manifest." The major climbed out first. He didn't wait for questions. He barked to a field sergeant. 5 civilians. 1 wounded canine. 1 high-priority subject with possible immunity. That was Miles. They pulled him first gently but not softly. 2 biotechs guided him toward a white containment unit parked near the second plane. A clear pod waited inside, already open like a coffin for the living. Miles looked over his shoulder. His eyes found me and froze. He stopped walking. "Where are they taking me?" I tried to follow. A soldier blocked me. "Only medical personnel and authorized staff." Emma's voice cracked. "He's a kid. He's just a kid," I said. "Stop," the soldier barked. Miles shook his head. "No." He turned back to the techs. "I'm not getting in that box alone." Debort Marion Hale stepped out of the command tent, flanked by guards, white coat, scorched at the hem, hair tied back tight like it was still a normal morning. "You're not alone," she said smoothly. "We'll be with you. I mean them," Miles said, pointing to us. "They're my family. I go with them. Or I don't go." She blinked. "That's not the protocol." "It is now," he said. She advanced. "You want to help stop this infection?" Miles didn't flinch. "Not if it means abandoning the people who kept me alive." The air around us changed. Soldiers nearby slowed. Eyes drifted. Fingers hovered near safeties. The major stepped between Hale and the pod. "They ride too," he said. "That's not your call." "I brought them here," the major said. "And they've bled more in 2 days than most of this base has since it stood up. We don't have room. Make room." Dr. Hale looked at me, then Riley, then Emma, then Bear, still limping. She exhaled through her nose like someone trying to keep the facade together. "You're jeopardizing the safety of this mission." Emma reached behind her and drew the crowbar from her pack slowly, not to threaten, just to show she still had teeth. Weapons clicked, a dozen rifles lifted. Ours, theirs, red laser dots danced across chests and arms and faces. One twitch and the last thread of the military protocol would unravel. The major didn't flinch. "We all board, or no one does." Miles stepped forward. His voice cracked, but it carried. "You need my blood. Then I need my family." For a second, no one breathed. Then Dr. Hale said, "Fine." Her tone was surgical, cold as steel in ice water. She nodded to the crew. "Load the subject into the pod. Clear Bay 4 for the rest." Rifles lowered. Sighs escaped lips like deflated lungs. I almost collapsed from the sheer weight of staying upright. They led Miles to the plexiglass pod. He looked back, once eyes wide. I nodded. Riley gave him a thumbs up. Emma winked. Bear barked a single low sound, almost like a farewell. Inside the plane, the hold was a cavern of steel and wires. Cots lined the walls. IVs swayed from overhead mounts. One civilian lay strapped to a gurney, wrist-bound IV in each arm, eyes closed. A tech hovered beside her, fingers on her carotid. Her chest barely moved. "Respiration's shallow," he muttered. "We're on the edge." "Keep her strapped," said another. "Pilot says 20 minutes until wheels up." The rear cargo ramp lifted with a grinding roar. The world outside disappeared behind metal and pressurization. We were airborne less than a minute later. As the plane climbed, I watched Emma settle Bear onto a webbed cot, wrapping his leg tighter with gauze Riley handed over. Emma's fingers trembled. Her eyes didn't. Riley leaned into my shoulder, cheeks sticky with blood and sweat. Think Cheyenne Mountain's real? Does it matter? I whispered. Yeah, it does. She was right. Hope only works if there's a place for it to land. 10 minutes into the flight, the tech monitoring the woman in restraints shook his head. She's gone. A medic arrived with a sidearm. No hesitation. 1 round to the temple. Contained. Clean. Then they bagged the body, hauled it to the rear hatch, and dumped it out into the gray sky below. No prayer. No words. Just a necessary loss. Ben clutched the bench strap so hard his knuckles paled. Is that what happens to us if we turn? Yes, I said. If we're lucky. Riley closed her eyes. We're not infected. We're not. But I didn't answer. Not out loud. Miles stirred inside his pod. He waved to us with his palm pressed to the glass. An IV ran into the crook of his elbow. Tubes fed into his other arm. He mouthed, "Thank you." I saluted. The major sat by the cockpit bulkhead, tuning his rifle scope. He looked older now, deeper shadows under the eyes. He caught my glance and walked over. Just so you know, he said, the deal you made for that kid, that was dangerous. I didn't make a deal. I said, I made a promise. He stared at me for a moment, then grudgingly nodded. You bought yourself some enemies. I'll take enemies over emptiness. We flew on in silence. Through the porthole, the Rockies loomed in the distance. Snow dusted the peaks like ash. Cheyenne Mountain was somewhere under there, if it still stood. I whispered our roll call like a litany. Tommy, Riley, Emma, Miles, Bear, still alive, still human. The C-130 hit the tarmac, hard tires screaming against cracked asphalt. A jolt rattled through the cabin as the plane taxied past barricades lit by orange flares and flood lamps. Outside the narrow porthole, the silhouette of Cheyenne Mountain rose like a buried titan, its entrance framed in steel and snow, floodlights carving the night like scalpels. We'd made it. Sort of. Hold positions, the flight officer barked. Medical escort inbound. Do not unbuckle. The cargo bay stayed locked in a hush, broken only by the hum of auxiliary power and Bear's low panting. Riley gripped my hand so tight it hurt. Her eyes were bloodshot, skin fever pale, but she was still lucid. Still her. Emma sat cross-legged beside Bear, one hand buried in his fur, the other clutching the crowbar like a sacred object. Miles blinked behind the plexiglass of the isolation pod, fur lines still hooked into his arms. He looked like a child in a spaceship, scared, weightless, but determined not to cry. The ramp lowered with a hydraulic hiss. Out came the white suits again, CDC PATH team armored and ghost-like. They approached fast, flanked by 2 MPs in riot gear. One of them pointed directly at Miles. Priority subject to be transferred immediately to Deep Level 2. No, Miles said, shaking his head. I go with them. Dr. Hale stepped forward from behind the escort. She looked the same tight bun eyes like broken glass, but now she had the mountain at her back. Authority etched into the snow itself. Miles, she said, voice silk wrapped around ice, your family can't come inside the lab. They do, he said louder this time, or I don't go at all. Hale's jaw ticked. This is out of negotiation. No, I said, stepping up. It's a decision. His. The major appeared behind me, rifle slung. They've earned escort clearance. I signed for it. You're not in command anymore. Neither are you, he said, not out here. The tension cracked like frozen wire. Rifles lifted again. Soldiers shifted. A tech tapped something on a tablet. Hale's voice came low, almost intimate. Do you understand what's at stake, Miles? You might be the first confirmed immune. Your blood could mean the difference between collapse and a cure, but if you let sentiment get in the way, we may lose that chance. I don't care if my blood saves the whole damn world, he said, voice trembling but defiant. I'm not going into another cage without the people who bled to keep me alive. The wind howled across the strip. Then the MP commander, older than the others, spoke. Ma'am, he said, eyes on Hale. We've got inbound from Denver. Another wave of survivors. You want a riot on your hands today? Or you want the kid in the pod with his pulse intact? Hale stared long and hard, then nodded. They stay. But they stay outside the level 2 perimeter. No lab access. No contact after blood draw. That's up to him, I said. Miles nodded. I'll give you what you need. Just let them be nearby. They wheeled him out on a gurney pod, sealed tight, flanked by 2 techs and a medic with a portable centrifuge. He looked like a boy headed to surgery who'd memorized his own will. The rest of us followed under escort through steel gates and past checkpoints into the lower levels of the mountain. Cheyenne wasn't what I expected. It wasn't high-tech Star Trek fantasy. It was industrial cold and humming with desperation. Concrete halls, chain-link partitions, cots stacked 3 high. People lined the walls, IUVs and arms of red wristbands denoting exposure. You could smell infection under the surface like mold beneath paint. They gave us a room, steel door, no lock on the inside, no windows. But it was warm, had lights, clean water, ration bars, and for now silence. Bear curled beside the vent ribs moving slower now. Riley laid on the cot with her head in my lap, burning with fever, but conscious. Emma cleaned her crowbar with bleach wipes. Ben slept face buried in his hoodie. The major paced near the door like he didn't know what to do when he wasn't pulling triggers. Time folded. We didn't know how many hours passed. Could have been 4. Could have been 10. Then the door opened. Dr. Hale entered, no guards this time. Just a clipboard and exhaustion in her bones. He gave us enough, she said, voice raw. Enough for sequencing. Enough for hope. And I asked, and you all bought yourselves passage, vetted, approved. You'll be assigned quarters within the civilian dome until transport opens back up. Riley stirred. So that's it. We're lab rats now. No, Hale said, you're witnesses. She left before we could ask more. Later that night, Miles came to see us. His arms had bandage tape. His eyes were red, but he smiled. They said I might be a baseline, for real immunity, like hardwired. I ruffled his hair. Told you your dad knew something. They're talking about flying samples to what's left of Geneva, he added. Global. I nodded. You okay? I don't know, he admitted, but I'm not alone. We sat in silence for a while. Then Emma whispered, are we ever going home? I didn't answer right away, because home wasn't a place anymore. It was a roll call. It was Tommy, Riley, Emma, Miles, Bear, and somehow against math and monsters and fire, we were all still breathing. That had to count for something. Outside the steel walls, the world was still ending. But in that moment, I believed maybe it could be rebuilt. Maybe not the same, but better, because we knew what it cost to survive now, and we knew what it meant to choose each other in the ruins.